You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
In the palms join. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Nice to see you all here. Yeah, it's a cool week. A lot going on. I try to just be present with like whatever's going on when how many of you are here for the first time? Just want to see how crazy I go with this. I would only maybe scare off a couple of you. Who else? Let me see the hand in the back. All right, cool. What brings you, those of you who are new, what brings you here?
I have a meditation practice that I do on my own, and I see value in meditating together, and I also see value in Buddhism, so I want to check it out.
Nice, welcome. Anybody else want to share for the first time while they're here?
I'll share.
Yeah. Hi.
This lovely gentleman told me about his experience here last week, and I've always had an interest in meditation on my own.
Right on. I can't see the lovely gentleman, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
So he's here.
Nice. So last week was the lovely gentleman's first time?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so they actually thought it was decent then. That's a good thing. Usually people check it out for like 6 weeks before they risk bringing somebody else. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to be here. As I always say, like, for me, my life, like everybody else's, is always hectic, crazy, a million things going on. So this practice every day is just a constant reminder that you just got to come back to sitting. And once you sit, then you settle with whatever is there. One of my favorite kind of metaphors in Zen teachings is you think of a vase, and you have a vase, and you pick it up, and clear water in the vase, and you got rocks and sand and pebbles, and you pick it up and you're just shaking it, and so everything's just a mess, right? And then you take the vase and you set it down, and when you set the vase down, what happens? It settles, right? And so it's simply a metaphor for our minds, which is very often not settled. Our mind very often is just like everything in the vase with the water and the rocks and the sand and the pebbles, and it's just shaking constantly. And so that's pretty much our daily lives. And so this practice, which, I always tell people, like, that's why I would actually be afraid if I stopped meditating. I'd be kind of scared. I don't know, like, they probably don't have, they still have, like, it's always fun when you're not a kid anymore. In the Jewish tradition, how old are you now again? 13 or 12? 13, right? Mm-hmm. So in the Jewish tradition, you're pretty much an adult by now, just so you know. Did you know that? No. So you're like an adult, pretty much. And I'm Jewish and I'm leading, so that by default, I think makes you an adult. You still have to listen to your mother, but you're pretty much an adult. But remember those, I don't know if they have them anymore, the cars that you kind of like, you wind it up, you set it down, and then it just goes, right? They still make those things anymore? Yes. So I always, when I was younger, I used to think of my mind and my life pretty much like that. That it was just constantly like, at the moment you set it down and it just like fires off at 1,000 miles an hour. And so for me as a practitioner, I would really be afraid to stop practicing because I think relatively quickly, maybe not like a week, maybe not even like a month, but I'm sure if I stopped all this by like 3 months, it would just be a disaster. So you just keep going. And so I was, again, reminded of that as I sat down here. And like I said, it's a beautiful week, but it's just an incredibly crazy, hectic week with Pride and everything that's going on. And again, it's all beautiful stuff, but it's a lot. And so the mind is in like 1,000 different directions. And I was like, I'm just going to sit. So just my way of saying that I'm sitting here right now for me, not for you all. I hope you enjoy it, but I'm going to pretty much ignore you for the next 15 minutes and do what I do. I'm kidding, for those who are So, all right, so we're going to sit. For those who are maybe new or joining for the first time, or those virtual showing up, glad you're here. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within the chaos. So if you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, wherever you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Hands will be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. With the body still, resting, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get every single day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do at all times. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate so many things and people outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world outside of us, life gets simpler. but it is a practice. Life will always be challenging. That's never going to go away. Life will always have things happen that you don't want happening. People will always do things that you disagree with. That's never going to change. The question is, how do you respond in all of these situations? That's what this practice is about. And it takes patience. Something I know all of you are so good at. Especially with yourself. Learning to be patient with yourself is incredibly important. You're just human. Done some good, done some bad, made some mistakes, made some wise choices. This is the nature of our lives. Had some happiness, had some sadness, had some joy, had some sorrow. That's pretty much what we get. And life's always going to be that way. Just because you do some Buddhist meditation thing doesn't mean that that changes. What helps us see slowly in time is to just respond to everything and everyone with gratitude and appreciation for each moment as an opportunity to cultivate loving kindness and compassion towards ourselves first and foremost, and then to those around us. Again, not an easy practice, but the anger that so many carry inside themselves doesn't destroy the other person, it destroys you. So, as anger continues to cultivate inside you, it's not helping anyone. It's just destroying you. And I don't know about you, but all the years I grew up angry, never did anything smart with that anger. I don't know, I mean, maybe if I played an instrument, I could have turned it into something. So I think I'll pause there. For me, I really always prefer just to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening. And for those who are joining virtually, again, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello. The chat box somewhere on your screen, and if you have any questions, put them there. I'll do my best to respond.
Thank you. So this is sort of I want to relate the experience I just had. It's not really a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So for a while I've been realised that I have some deep-seated beliefs that I'm defective and that I don't deserve to be here, etc., etc. So I've been working on that, and I've been getting some help and guidance, and the suggestions that the lady made was that I would remember, realise, focus on things about myself that I like, and then get specific recollections of things that I've done that I feel good about, and meditate on them. And it hasn't worked at all for me. It's nice, it's very fuzzy. When I'm making assertions that my subconscious doesn't believe, I get an emotional response, and then I go on making them, and I overcome them, and then I make progress. So I made an assertion during this meditation, which is a bit far-fetched, but I made drastic progress in this session, so I'm very grateful for being here.
Beautiful.
And that it happened in the way we did, which is to say that I am a perfect example of a human being, and in essence, I'm perfect. Which is sort of, I know I'm not perfect, actually, right? But that assertion is powerful enough and positive that I feel like I'm moving the needle, and I had immense emotional response the whole time, but it got better.
Yeah.
It got lesser and lesser and lesser. This is the thing I'm going to focus on from now on in my assertions.
Great.
So thanks to all of you for your supporting me. That realizing necessary. I'm
Yeah.
not saying this would work for anyone else. For me, this is huge.
Yeah. The Buddhist said there's 84,000 paths to awakening. In other words, 84,000 ways to suffer less. And whatever that way is, assuming it's healthy and not causing harm to self or others, then it's beautiful. And I think, just to kind of paraphrase the beginning of what you said for those who maybe didn't hear it, because I just want to highlight this part, is that you have this view of yourself that you're defective.
Yes.
And you've had a really hard time with that for obvious reasons, and that somebody told you, you've been working through it, and somebody told you recently to pick out positive aspects of you, I'm paraphrasing this, and in your meditation to focus on those. And in essence, you've been saying that shit just ain't working. But tonight you said that you started to make some progress in that. And I think the other piece to it that you said, and you may or may not have heard me say this before, but I say this a lot, and which is interesting that you said it. Suzuki Roshi, who built San Francisco Zen Center, who's probably one of my favorite Buddhist teachers and just brilliant at, I think, understanding how to share this with a Western mind. He would say to his students, you're all perfect, exactly how you are. And you could use a little improvement. So I think that's a really, for me, it became, for somebody who grew up always angry, hating myself, and then hating everyone around me, when I began to see like, okay, yes, I'm perfect, but I got work to do, and a little bit, but instead of thinking that I'm this big piece of you-know-what, and having to like drastically, undo all of that, that's heavy.
Pretty right.
So, yeah, good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
What else? Thoughts or questions? So there's a question here in Buddhist philosophy. How should one handle a situation where a loved one or a friend becomes controlling or makes you feel guilty when you haven't done anything? When you haven't done anything wrong. It's almost easier when I don't know the people who ask questions. So I laughed at the last part, not really fair, especially since you're not even here to defend yourself, Paul. But I'll pick on you anyways. But so let's forget the anything wrong part. Like, I get it. You're coming from a place, potentially, if this is even about you, maybe you're asking for a friend that, you haven't done anything wrong. But let's focus on the beginning part. Kind of Buddhist teachings on handling a situation where a loved one or a friend becomes controlling or makes you feel guilty. Forget about whether you've done something right or wrong, because that's in many ways irrelevant. That you're perceiving somebody as being controlling and making you feel guilty. So we'll kind of work through this backwards. Nobody makes you feel guilty, right? Dependent origination, the causal relationship of all phenomena, everything is contingent upon something else for its existence, meaning somebody may be saying things to you, and you may be buying into that, and you may feel like they're trying to make you feel guilty, but if you've done nothing wrong, and they're just trying to say stuff to you, that's not you feeling guilty. That's them expressing their pain. So, for me, without getting into kind of this idea of the emptiness teachings, but emptiness teachings is understanding that we don't understand where anyone is coming from ever, even though we think we do. You can know somebody for 50 years and you still don't know everything they're thinking, nor every experience they've had. So, when people act, I already know the answer to this, and everyone in this room, anyone in here ever been controlling? Right? So, when we are trying to control somebody, in our minds, if we're trying to control somebody, right? We're in pain. We're suffering. We're afraid. So we are trying to control someone or something or an outcome. That's why we do it. Various, degrees of that, and it's different every single time. But most people aren't walking around peaceful, happy, and pleasant and just decide, I'm going to try to control people, right? So there's a level of suffering or discomfort in our minds and our hearts that causes us to do things, to try to, in our own way, have really this illusion of trying to control someone. So if you kind of work your way into this backwards, that this person that you're saying that may be trying to control you, they're just suffering. And they're expressing their pain. And you choose how you want to respond to that. If it's healthy and safe and you have proper boundaries and you can be with their pain and suffering, then you can be with it. If you can't, then you remove yourself from the situation. But nobody causes you to feel guilty. You're causing yourself to feel guilty. And, again, in most situations, not all, we have a choice if we want to stay in a situation or leave it. It's not always that simple. But if you feel unhealthy, if you feel that you're not able to handle this, what you're perceiving as an act of trying to control you, then, and you can remove yourself from the situation, then you remove yourself from the situation. And again, the last part about whether someone did something wrong or not, also irrelevant. Meaning people are going to try to control you and bring their pain and suffering onto you, whether you did things right or wrong. The question is, how do you respond to them? And if you can't manage your response to them and you can remove yourself, then you remove yourself. That's their karma to deal with, their path, their pain, their suffering. You choose how you want to face it. So, what else?
Where do we begin on the whole, loving yourself before trying to fix things outside of yourself? Because, I feel very overwhelmed by that, and even though it's in my control, it does, my own emotions and things, it doesn't really feel like it's in my control.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, right? So to paraphrase for those who didn't hear it in the back or virtually, is that where do we even begin with starting to love yourself before you can love somebody else? And you said something to the effect of, even if it seems like it's in my control, you don't feel like it is. And in many ways, initially, because it's not. Instead of I'll just kind of suggest a different maybe semantics around here, but we as individuals, we have the ability to control our emotions. We have the ability to be loving and kind and compassionate towards ourselves. But to say we have the control over that, I think is a little bit misleading, because it sounds like, well, I should be able to just press a button and boom, I can control all of my emotions. And I can just be instantly happy and send all the love and kindness to myself in the world. Well, if you spend 20 years hating yourself, a couple Pema Chödrön books and Buddhist things aren't just going to immediately flip the switch. So I think, to respond to your question very directly, where to begin is, where and when is now and always, right? That's, to me, the obvious response, which is you always want to start. I suggest you always start with trying to have love and compassion for yourself first and foremost. Otherwise, it's going to be really difficult to have that towards others. But to just kind of, and this doesn't help you at all, but to actually echo what you're saying is, that's not easy. Right? You've listened to this stuff long enough. It's like, yeah, I love myself and everything's going to be fine. But how do we even begin to do that? And I think it starts with this. We look at the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, the cause of our suffering. Constantly greedy, wanting more, taking, angry at the way things are, and ignoring reality. And so in this case, I think ignorance, it sounds like a silly thing to actually apply ignorance to yourself to get to a place where you can actually love yourself. So that's in essence what I'm suggesting, is to understand that you're just ignoring reality. The reality is you're not nearly as terrible of a person as you think you are. That's the ignorance. The ignorance is, for whatever reason, you're telling yourself that you're some bad person and you don't deserve this and you shouldn't have this and you don't get this and woe is me. That's the ignorance. Not obviously meant in an offensive way, but you're ignoring reality, which is you're just human. So the wisdom, which is how we overcome ignorance, is to say, I'm going to be wise enough and patient enough to give myself some time. It's not going to be easy, but we keep showing up to this practice. We keep working on it. We keep kind of chiseling away. I always think of life. You ever seen Shawshank Redemption? Right? Oh, it's one of the best food. If you haven't, come on. If you haven't seen Shawshank, just really only 3 of you? Okay, I just want to. Okay, now I feel better. I was attached to my movie, right? But I don't want to ruin it for those of you who haven't seen it now. Now I'm stuck. But there's a scene in there. It's a prison movie, and Denzel Washington. I'm sorry, Morgan Freeman and Morgan Freeman and what's his name? Thank you, Tim Robbins. Help me out here, Tim Robbins, right? And there's a scene in there. I'm trying to think how to describe this without giving it away, but it's a prison movie, right? He wants to break out of prison, and so to get through the wall, he's just taking like every day one tiny little pebble. Takes him a long time. Maybe he gets out, maybe he doesn't. That's why I don't want to ruin it for you. But let's just say he creates the hole large enough to be able to get out, if he wanted to. But every day it required taking one little piece away from that wall. To me, I've seen so many things in my life like that scene, where it's just every day you're chiseling away one more piece of anger, one more piece of ignorance, one more piece of, this story you've been telling yourself, and you're slowly starting to chisel away through that. All right? So all these things, the meditation, the reading, the Buddhist practice, those are all like taking little pieces out of the wall. But it's not going to happen in 3 months. So be patient. What else?
How did you get into Buddhism?
How did I get into Buddhism? Years of pain and suffering. That started when I was 13 years old. That's why I love this kid so much. Yeah. I was 13 when I realized how angry and miserable and depressed I was. But you're way ahead of me, because it took me 15 years before Buddhism became really a part of my life. So hopefully I've just saved you another 15 years of anger and misery, which you shared, last week. The very short story, I first read a book in college when I was 20 called Intro to Zen by D.T. Suzuki. And it was a Zen Buddhist book about kind of the nature of everything and how your mind works. And I didn't understand it at all. And it was actually really good for me, because at that age and much older, I wanted to understand everything, right? And that's really frustrating, right? When you try to understand things. Most people in here are quite a bit older than you are, and they're still trying to understand things. And you know what? They also can't figure it out, right? So you have that to look forward to, first of all. But what this book actually helped me see when I was 20 years old was like, whoa, I'm going to stop trying to understand everything. In fact, I'm going to stop trying to understand anything, because nothing makes sense. Whether you're 13 or 30 or 80, so much of life, I promise you, will never make sense to you. And it is actually the mind trying to make sense of what's happening that causes the suffering. It's not so much the thing that's happening. There are things that cause suffering, right? I don't want to diminish that. But very often our suffering comes from our mind trying to understand why something is happening. And this book helped me see that, like, I'm never going to understand shit. I was like, wow, that was so freeing, so liberating. Like, it was so just peaceful to know I'm never going to understand everything. That was, 36 years ago. Or no, that's when I was 13, but that was 29 years ago when I first read that book. And so that was when I was 20. But then for 8 years, I was like, yeah, that Buddhist stuff is cool and fun, and I don't understand anything, but I'm still going to be stupid. So it wasn't until 8 years later that I really got into Buddhist practice. And I just realized I didn't want to wake up anymore miserable and depressed. And so I started going to a temple every day for 2 years, and then shipped off to a monastery in Taiwan. Yeah. Lived like a Zen monk for 11 months. No money? Could you do that?
I don't know.
No wallet, no keys, no phone. You wear the same thing every day, kind of equivalent to pajamas, They feed you. You get up at 4:30 in the morning. No, that's the deal breaker, huh? But you also go to sleep at like 9:30, so you're still getting 7 hours of sleep, you know? How many hours of sleep do 13-year-olds need these days?
I don't know. I sleep a lot.
A lot? Yeah. Dogs get like 18, so hopefully you're a little bit less than that. Yeah, but learning to not take everything so seriously is what Buddhism actually taught me. And it allowed me to enjoy the good things that I had in life. Because even at 13, you probably have a lot of bad things around you, a lot of bad things going on, a lot of bad things you don't like, a lot of bad things that you don't understand. But you also have a lot of wonderful things. Good stuff, people that love you, care about you, family, right? You have also wonderful things in a good life. So you're going to wake up every day and you're going to pick two choices. To focus on all the negative, painful things that you don't understand, or focus on all the beautiful, happy things that you also don't understand.
Yeah.
But at least they're beautiful and happy. So focus on the positives. And the other stuff, it'll come and go your whole life. You'll be all right. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you repeat the name of the book?
Oh yeah, that one was Intro to Zen. There might be like Intro to Zen Buddhism, but D.T. Suzuki was a Japanese Zen priest, Buddhist scholar, and really wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I've been reading a recovery Buddhist textbook that has questions in it, and I've gotten to the part of the Eightfold Path, and kind of got stuck on the first one, what is understanding?
Yeah.
Maybe you could help break it down.
Yeah, so to paraphrase the question, you've been reading some Buddhist recovery books, and you got to the part, it has questions in it, and you got to the Eightfold Path, and you're kind of stuck on the first one. It's good to ask that question now, because if you don't get the first one right, the other 7, you're pretty much screwed, right? So you really want to have that right understanding, because that becomes all the rest. Just to put it into context for those who maybe aren't familiar with it very briefly, the very first thing the Buddha taught is the Four Noble Truths. First thing is life is suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks. It just means you're going to suffer a lot. Discomfort, dissatisfaction, angst, things just not feeling right, the temperature's not right, your hair's not right, your clothes aren't right, little things, right? But also heavy suffering and trauma we face as well. So the first thing is life is filled with this. Second thing is the cause, the greed, the anger, and the ignorance. Right? We overcome greed with generosity, anger with compassion, and ignorance with wisdom, as I was talking about. The third one is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering, just kind of having a good day, right? Waking up and it's no longer Groundhog Day. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path. And this is what the Buddha taught as literally the path to end all suffering. The good news is it's only 8 things. Isn't it good to know that you only need 8 things to do to end all suffering in your life? Like, I mean, how hard could it really be? So these 8 things, right? And you'll see different, like you said, understanding. You'll see different translations for pretty much all of them. Right view is another one, or right understanding. But you have right views or understanding, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. These are the 8 steps. And it starts with right understanding or right view. And so one of the my favorite examples of right understanding or right view, because this is really talking about prajna, which is wisdom. This is in Buddhism where we look at the moral or the wisdom teachings, the what's called sila, samadhi, and prajna, without getting too technical for you. But this is the wisdom, the Eightfold Path is broken down into 3 categories: wisdom, ethics and morality, and mindfulness and concentration. As you go through them, you'll see where they all fit, right? But the first one around right understanding is the wisdom teaching. And one story I share every so often, I just shared it recently, I don't know if you heard it or not, but years ago we had a Buddhist monk, and he was just telling a story. He grew up here in San Diego, and he was giving the example of if he was in Poway, and he wanted to go to Los Angeles, and he got on eventually the 15 freeway and went south. Was he ever going to get to Los Angeles? No. Right? If you keep going south, you're not getting there. So his intention was maybe good. his effort, his diligence, which is later in the Eightfold Path, was maybe there. I mean, maybe he drove for 32 hours straight, right? And he had pure intention of why he was going to LA. And it was to do beautiful things, and his heart was wide open. But his understanding, it was just the wrong direction. He was never going to get there. So when we look at right understanding, it helps to begin to look at the opposite of wisdom in Buddhist teachings, which is ignorance. Do you know when you're doing things you just shouldn't do? Usually. Right? I mean, sometimes we're not sure, but a lot of times it's pretty clear. It's like, I shouldn't do this. I do it anyways, and then I realize the next day I shouldn't do it. And we just repeat that cycle. So part of right understanding begins with taking all of the things, the ignorance that you know you just shouldn't do, shouldn't say, shouldn't think, shouldn't act on, and stop doing them. Instead of trying to think of like what is, again, I'm drawing a parallel to right view or right understanding to the wisdom teachings, because that's really what it's about. Instead of thinking, what is the absolute perfect understanding? Look at the opposite, which is what is definitely not right understanding. And I don't know about you, but I can spend years just there. And the more you eliminate these, I hate to call them raw, it's also why I don't love